I lost you guys.
Okay, there we go. All right, so thank you so much, Zach Ellinger, for being here this afternoon. Zach is the BLM California State Lead for Fire Prevention, Education, and Mitigation Program based out of the Sacramento, California. His career in wildland fire began in 2000, and Zach has had the opportunity to work for both the U.S. Forest Service and the BLM in Washington, California, and Nevada. In 2021, Zach graduated from the University of Nevada, Reno 401 program. Zach enjoys travel, culinary experiments, outdoor adventures, reading, and watching football. And apparently he's a huge Seahawks fan. His participation on several wildland fire steering committees, cadres, and task groups have allowed him to serve the wildland fire community in developing new and creative ways to tackle the evolving world of wildfire complexity. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon, Zach, and I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much for the introduction. And just real quick audio check and video check. We're seeing and hearing me and the presentation.
Everything sounds and looks great, Zach.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. So first of all, thank you for sticking with us today. This has been a really exciting event to participate in. And I know I've learned a lot. So they've saved the best for last. Sarah was a hard act to follow, but I'll do my best. We're going to spend a few moments talking about wildfire prevention education teams, what they are, and how they've evolved over the past couple decades since their inception. So bear with me. I know that a lot of people in the audience are just as familiar, if not more familiar, with fire prevention education teams than I am. But I know that there are also some folks that are new to fire prevention and would probably benefit from the following slides. So with that said, I'm not going to read the slides. I'm going to leave them up for you to read them. But we're going to talk about a little bit about what the subject matter of the slides. Just very recently, there was a fire NWCG subcommittee formed to help facilitate the needs of FPETs and kind of help, well, like with many functional areas in wildland fire, help improve the program and identify what areas we're doing really well in and what areas we need to improve in. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Okay, so what kind of things are FPETs ordered for? What are their needs, or what are they called when needed for, and what type of activities do they take part in? So this is just a limited list. I'll throw the disclaimer out there that FPETs have the ability to do much more than this, but this is kind of the core functional area of some of the things that they do. The big one most recently is coordinating with prevention efforts during areas of extreme need. Recently it seems like every time is a time of extreme need, but there are certain times of the year that have higher fire danger than other times, thankfully still. And fire prevention teams are usually called during those times of high fire danger. One thing to note, though, is that really, I think it's pretty broadly accepted that fire prevention teams are most effective when there isn't smoke in the air, because although smoke in the air can be a teachable moment, there's a lot of opportunity to prevent a wildfire before it happens. And, when things are burning, that's not necessarily the best time to order a fire prevention team, although they can still be effective then. And here's a little bit more about that. So not just unusually high burning conditions, but also fire occurrence. And as we saw this year with PL5, most of our firefighting resources were committed. And so the ability to bring in a special emphasis group or a fire prevention team that can kind of bolster or boost a unit's fire prevention capacity can be very helpful. So that's a common thing. And then this last part of the slide talks about outcomes. So this is not what fire prevention teams do, but what we are hoping the outcome of our actions will be. So the reduction of losses, reduction of suppression costs, all that stuff. And then the last one I think is probably overlooked oftentimes, but when executed correctly, a fire prevention education team has a vast ability to improve upon interagency relations, and oftentimes can find connections that one didn't know existed, or that a unit may not be capitalizing on as best as they probably could, or most efficiently. So improving those interagency relations is super important and a very integral part of what FPETs do. I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but the NWCG Fire Prevention Education Team Subcommittee is a subcommittee of the CEPC, which has been mentioned a lot today, but That's the Communication, Education, and Prevention NWCG committee. And we're about a year and a half to 2 years old. And I would struggle to find the date of our inception in the email chain, but I guess the thought there is that before the committee was an actual formal committee, it was a task force. And that came to be because there were people that were participating in the FPET program that realized this program is so important and so vital to the future of fire prevention and what fire prevention teams can do nationally that we're doing ourselves a disservice if we're not doing it as best as we possibly can and most efficiently and in the most coordinated manner possible. So a task force was formed to look at efficiencies and areas of improvement, and then to make recommendations to its parent committee on what to be done. And what we found was that there were areas that we could improve in and things that we could streamline. The inception of FireNet had just come into play, and so the task force was struggling with how were we going to integrate with the new platform of FireNet and successfully use that tool. So a lot of things came about as a result of the formation of that initial task force, which then evolved into a subcommittee. Okay, this is just some examples of recent products that were developed by fire prevention education teams. These are just kind of eye candy. I always am trying to show off our good work, and I think these are really good examples of messages being communicated to the public in a visually appealing way. And so although product development and messaging development is not the only thing that FPETs often find themselves tasked with, it is something that they are often asked to do. And so here are some examples of products that have to do with fire restrictions and target shooting that we heard Mark talk about earlier. And that's it. That's all I've got, guys. I know I'm way ahead of schedule, but I wanted to leave some time for questions and answers, and leave my contact information there. There's also the link to the subcommittee if you want to learn more about what we've been doing.
Great. Thank you so much, Zach. And that's okay. We have 2 or 3 polls that we would like to post and get everybody's opinions to follow up on what you've just been talking about. And then during that time, while people are completing their polls, it might help maybe bring some things to mind for them that they want to ask you. So I'll go ahead and launch the first poll now. It just asks, have you been on an FPET team or seen the results of their work? And we'll give you just a couple minutes to answer that poll before we move on to the next one. Okay, and so moving on to our next poll. Using your gut, complete this sentence. The best wildfire prevention campaign strategy involves... And so we did just have one question pop up in the chat, Zach. How does one get the training to get on FPET?
Yeah, that's a great question. So fortunately, the training to participate as a fire prevention education team member was just revised recently. So that's on the NWCG website. And, you know, hopefully as the nation moves through COVID, we're able to start offering these things in person a lot more. Right now, there are virtual offerings for these courses. The other one, Fire Prevention Education Team Leader, is also a very good course. But the way to enroll is just to go through the Wildland Fire Learning Portal, find the classes either P310 or P410, and enroll that normal way. And I think I might have said FI earlier, but that was a misspoke. It's P310 is the prevention team member course. And that's the best way to get the training.
Okay, great. Thank you, Zach. And we'll just ask for one more poll to our participants that are out there. In terms of wildfire prevention, what is your role within your agency?
Hopefully at some point, Karen, these poll results can get to be shared with the participants. I know some of them have, but they've been kind of elusive. So
yes, we are capturing all of the results from all of the polls, and they'll be shared at the end.
Awesome.
We're getting some really good responses in here.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. I can't believe.
And we have one more question for you, Zach.
All right.
Okay. What is the budget structure for FPETS? Host unit providing the funding does a lot of work with little money.
Yeah, that's also a great question. So FPET funding has changed slightly over the past year, but the answer is it can come in many different ways. So there can be in-kind opportunities, just like we do with other types of agreements. When an FPET is formed under the delegation of authority, the participating agencies can work with the host agency to provide some additional funding for the team if needed. Oftentimes, national fire severity funding is used for fire prevention teams, and the large fire support code can be used as well. So that's if it's a federal fire prevention education team. State and local entities have the ability to form and use fire prevention teams as well, and it just depends on what funding mechanism that they find is most efficient for their operations. It really depends on the composure of the team and what different funding pots they have the ability to charge to. So state folks have different funding mechanisms than federal folks, and federal folks have several different funding mechanisms they're able to use. So for the BLM, we have fire trespass monies that are collected after there's been either a negligent or liable wildfire as part of the suppression recovery fund. BLM can use that money towards fire prevention education teams, but there's just a variety of sources. And although you can get a lot of work done with very little amount of actual money, the fire prevention seems to be like one of those things that the more funding you have to put towards it, the greater the return. And so, there are small grassroots fire prevention education team opportunities out there. And I've seen them be very, very successful. The state of Utah is a great example of how those people have worked creatively and proactively to campaigns with probably limited resources, but it's just different every time and everywhere you go across the country.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Zach. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We've really enjoyed this presentation. So just a quick comment to all of our participants out there. We did have the technical difficulties with Linda Hecker's presentation earlier this morning. We have found a solution, and I did add it also to the main chat. But if you were able to join us at 10 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow morning, that's just an hour earlier than what we're scheduled to start, then we'll go ahead and air her presentation at that time. But no worries, if you're not able to join us that early, it will be recorded and the link will be shared along with all the other recorded presentations after the event's ended. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this session. And like I said, don't leave. We want you to stick with us for Maureen Brooks' session, our social hour.